And now we'll talk a little Flyers hockey. Of course, we'll talk with Charlie O'Connor. He's the lead beat writer for PHLY.com. He does a great job. Let's go to the Toms River Volkswagen Sports Hotline and welcome into the locker room Charlie O'Connor. Good morning, Charlie.
Hey, Billy. How you doing?
All right, man. We got a lot of questions. And, Charlie, when I want to talk Flyers hockey, I talk to you because you are a leading authority for me when it comes to Flyers hockey. Charlie, you do a great – I'm looking at your website. You do a great job at PHLY.com, man.
Yeah, it's actually – so it's all PHLY.com.
Right.
That's the
but you
that's
still say
yeah.
Philly, though, right? Or no?
No. You're supposed to spell it out as if it's call letters.
Okay.
So PHLY.
PHLY.com. I love it, Charlie. I got to be honest with you. I don't really. There's so many different ways. The Flyers have 11 picks in this year's draft. So obviously they're gonna. I want somebody that's going to make an immediate impact. So I need you to give me somebody that you think is going to make an immediate impact. But with all those picks, they're going to do some move. They're going to move around, right?
You would think. They have 3 first-round picks, then they have 4 second-round picks. So that's 7 picks in the first 2 rounds. We're talking about high-value picks, not just in terms of the guys you can pick in the draft, but
right.
also things you could potentially, use in trades because teams want first-round picks. They want second-round picks. Now, I'm not expecting the Flyers to trade away the 6th overall pick. The 6th overall pick is an extremely valuable asset that they can use to get a young player, a guy who's 18 years old, who can be part of this for years to come and hopefully be a top-of-the-lineup guy. But those 2 later first-round picks, the picks that are 22 and 31, and then all those picks in the early part of the second round, yeah, they could potentially be used, whether it's to trade up into, let's say trade from 22 up into the teens to get another top prospect, or to use, one or more of those picks to trade for current NHL players that can help the team now.
So, Charlie, would it be out of the realm of possibility for the Flyers to maybe trade a couple of those picks for Connor McDavid?
I think that would be very unlikely, Billy. But you're welcome to dream.
I am dreaming, but I mean, Connor fell short two years in a row to the Florida Panthers. So maybe they want to move on from him. And the Flyers could entice Edmonton to do something like that.
I would say that Edmonton is not going to trade Connor McDavid unless Connor McDavid tells Edmonton, "I want to leave." He's up to sign a new contract on July 1st. We shall see if he re-signs with them because his contract expires at the end of next season.
Right. Yeah.
So he'd be eligible to sign a new contract, a contract extension on July 1st. If it starts getting into the summer, deep into the summer, August, September, and McDavid's still saying he's not going to sign with them, maybe things get interesting. And obviously every team in the NHL will be trying to trade for Connor McDavid, so it's not like the Flyers would have a monopoly on that. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. My guess is McDavid stays in Edmonton, but I guess you never know.
We're talking with Charlie O'Connor from PHLY.com. Charlie, the Philadelphia Flyers have been preaching patience, have been preaching this rebuild, and Danny Briere, Keith Jones, they do a great job. They now got They have Rick Tocchet into the fold. First off, a lot of people are skeptical about bringing Rick Tocchet back. How do you feel about that hire?
Well, I think Rick Tocchet is at the very least a good coach. He did a good job in
won the Jack Adams.
Vancouver 2 years ago, won the Jack Adams, and he's coached in a lot of places where he didn't have a lot of support. He coached in Arizona where their ownership was a disaster. They don't even have a team anymore at Arizona. He coached in Tampa Bay where they were coming off of getting the first overall pick, so he wasn't exactly taking over a team filled with talent. What I'll say about Tocchet is he has an extremely good reputation among people in the game who swear by his knowledge, who swear by his ability to connect with players. If you look at his track record in the NHL as a head coach, it probably isn't worthy of the big contract the Flyers gave him and the degree of trust. But the Flyers know him. They know him personally. Obviously, he's in the Flyers Hall of Fame. He is part of the Flyers gang. Everybody in that organization knows him well. And they all vouch for him being the right guy. So it'll be very interesting to see him in an organization where he's getting the kind of support that I would say he's never really gotten. Like even in Vancouver, obviously 2 years ago he won the Jack Adams. Last year the team didn't do as well.
But they had a lot of injuries. Vancouver had a lot of injuries.
I think it was less about the injuries and more about the fact that their two star centers, JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, hated each other.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's pretty hard to win when two of your best players are basically having an open feud. So this team, I think, is in a lot better. The Flyers, I mean, are in a lot better spot overall in terms of organizational health. So we'll see how Rick Tocchet can do with an organization that isn't a total dumpster fire.
We had Tocchet on last week, and I just think that he's going to bring. I think it'll attract high caliber players to come play for him. I really do.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that's one of the theories behind the hire. The Flyers believe that Rick Tocchet, especially in comparison to John Tortorella, where I can tell you there were a lot of players in the league that were never going to sign with a John Tortorella coach team. Rick Tocchet certainly has a better reputation as more of a player's coach, a guy who connects well with players. He was also, a former NHL player who was a very good one, and a lot of players look at that as a real bonus. That he can empathize, he can understand what it's like to be in the league and like to be a successful player. So that's the Flyers' theory. I guess we'll see. We'll see if it does indeed help them attract talent when they go out and they try to get talent.
3 Stanley Cups under his belt, 1 as a player, 2 as an assistant coach with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, he did a really good job as the assistant coach of the Penguins. I'm not going to put too much stock in him winning the Stanley Cup as a player. Like, that's great, fantastic for him, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be a good coach. There are a lot of guys who have won Stanley Cups as a player who would never make it as a coach, but he did do a very good job as an assistant coach with the Penguins. You're absolutely right.
All right, Charlie, let's talk about some of the people that are available in the draft. This is why I got you on, for your expertise. Who would you like to see the Flyers pick?
Well, the one guy who jumps out at me as being, kind of the, I wouldn't say dream pick because I don't want to put words in the Flyers' mouth, but, James Hagens was projected to be the first overall pick this time last year, and he didn't have a bad draft season. He just didn't quite blow the doors off like people expected he was going to, given all the hype around him. There's a legitimate possibility he could slip to 6. And while I think there are some people that worry a little bit about his size. He's not the biggest guy.
Yeah, let me interrupt. Hold on, Charlie. Let me interrupt.
Are you a size person?
Yeah, I was going to say, let me interrupt you, Charlie, because this is what I profess, and I don't care what sport it is. Big guys beat up on little guys. You can have, like, Travis Kinnack, you have a couple of little mighty mites, but you got to have, in the NHL, you have to have tough, physical, intimidating people. And I want a big center, Charlie.
Yeah. I want a skilled center. I want a guy who can dominate in terms of skill and score goals rather than a guy who's just going to be big and hit people.
Well, I know, obviously, scoring goals is part of the equation, but someone that can see the ice. Like Toc professed to us last week, he said it numerous times. You got to get a guy with a high hockey IQ and someone with great character.
Yeah, I agree with that. Those are both things I value very highly, and I think Hagens has. I think there are a lot of guys in this draft at the top that have that, but I am always going to be less interested in how tall a guy is and how much he weighs, and more interested in how skilled he is and how well he thinks the game.
Charlie, what do you think about this McGreer? Who's the guy that's 6'5"? He's a center. McGear?
Oh, Roger McQueen. Yeah, Roger McQueen's interesting. He's obviously huge. He's got all the size. He's got tons of skill. Really good around the net. The big concern with him is the injuries.
Right.
So Yeah, it's his back. He missed the bulk of his draft season with a back injury. He claims it's resolved. He claims that it's a fracture that is healed. The thing with back injuries, though, is they're scary. Sometimes they can recur. Sometimes it's not something that necessarily goes away. You re-injure your back, and look, McQueen's interesting, and I like him a lot as a prospect. He's got a ton of skill. Obviously, he's got the size, so that adds to his plausible upside. Because if you're bigger, you just have the ability to do things that smaller guys can't. But there's also a risk on his side that he could be, and I'm obviously different injuries, but he could be a Nolan Patrick, where he's out of the league by his early 20s. So, big swing, big reward, but also legitimate risk there with him.
I want the Flyers to, I know it's a rebuild, and they keep professing it, and I love that, but this year I want them to draft somebody that can make an immediate impact. Who do you think that would be?
Well, I'm not really expecting anybody they take to necessarily be in the NHL this season. If they had gotten one of the top 2 picks, I think those guys could. And maybe, if they were to get like a Porter Martone who brings real size to the table, he's a winger, he's a little older, he could. I know Hagens has said he's shooting to be in the NHL next year. So there are some guys that are possible options, but I think if they're going to help the team on draft day, it's like, as in this upcoming season, it's not going to be necessarily with their pick. It's going to be if they trade a pick or two for, like, let's say a goalie to maybe help them keep some pucks out of the back of the net, or maybe trade for a youngish forward who can help them score. They have the assets where they could do it. It just comes down to whether they can find the right deal.
We're talking with Charlie O'Connor. He's the lead beat writer for the Flyers for PHLY.com. Charlie, talk about the goalie situation, because Danny wants me to ask you this question. Would the Flyers, if Carter Hart gets exonerated, would the Flyers be interested in bringing him back?
I'm skeptical, but I guess it's possible. Obviously, it's a really tough situation. He's still in the process of going through the trial for sexual assault, along with the other Hockey Canada players who were charged. So unclear how that's going to play out in terms of whether he gets convicted, whether some get convicted and some get acquitted. We're just not sure. If he were to be acquitted, I don't know. My hunch is that ownership would be very skeptical, and they would have to be sold on it, because obviously we're talking about serious stuff, pretty awful stuff that he was accused of. If he were acquitted, though, and if they could convince ownership, then it just kind of comes down to whether the front office would want him. Now, obviously, Carter Hart was a good goalie for the Flyers. I wouldn't say he ever quite took the leap into being a great goalie, but they know him. That said, it's not as if this situation, from what I understand, there was they were maybe at times thinking that Hart was not involved in this as much as he actually ultimately ended up being. So maybe there could be some trust broken there between the organization and Hart. So we'll see. Look, the Flyers definitely need to upgrade in goal. Yes. I think they know that. They like Sam Ersson. They think he can be part of the solution, but I think they realize they need another goalie to pair with him. I'm not expecting that goalie to be Carter Hart, regardless of how the situation plays out. But I do believe the Flyers know that they need they need another solid goalie who can split time with Ersson and just give the team a chance to win every game, which I don't think they had last year, given the goalie situation. You can follow Charlie O'Connor on the X platform, Twitter, at @CharlieO_Con, right? Yes, I like that. Right. That's unique, Charlie. Charlie, you can't put an apostrophe on Twitter, so you got to do it another way. Charlie, I'm looking at your website, man. I like the cartoon character face. That guy looks just like you. Yeah, exactly. That's one of our gimmicks. Charlie, the Flyers. So this year they've got 11 picks. What do they have? What do they have next year? Because, like you said, we both agree that they're being patient. They're making the fan base be patient. What do they got next year? I mean, do they have a lot of draft picks lined up for next year too? Yeah, not as many as this year. This year is really the big one where they really stockpiled a ton of picks. This is the year where you can tap into your arsenal. And look, and Briere said this last week when we spoke with him in Voorhees at the Flyers training center. He said, look, we might use all of our picks. And I don't necessarily think that would be a terrible outcome. It's just that if you use all 7 of those picks, you better come away with 3 or 4 guys who are really good NHL players when they ultimately get to the get to the Flyers big club. Because if you use all those picks and say you only get one legitimate contributor, then you're going to think back 3-4 years down the road and say, man, you could have used one of those second round picks to trade for a legitimately good NHL player rather than a lottery ticket prospect who didn't even pan out. So this is going to be a really, really pivotal week, let's say 2 weeks for the Flyers, but really weak, because once you use the picks have been used. Right now, you can trade those picks for things. Once you use them, well, they've been used, and now it's just what those prospects turn into. So we'll see. I think this is a really, really important week for Briere as a GM and the Flyers overall, just because of all the opportunities they have, given all the picks they have. Charlie, one last question. And Sean Couturier is the captain, right? Will he remain the captain? I mean, what do you think about his future? He's getting up there. I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't remain the captain.
Right.
He's got a no movement clause in his contract. He doesn't want to leave, and I thought it was noteworthy that after the Flyers hired Rick Tocchet, because obviously there was, and Couturier was open about this, there was conflict between him and John Tortorella, between Couturier and John Tortorella. Right. They didn't see eye to eye. Torts scratched him 2 seasons ago for a few games, and that didn't go over too well with Couturier or the rest of the players, to be honest. Well, after the Flyers hired Rick Tocchet, the Flyers released a video they put out on their social media where you had Jonesy and Danny and Dan Hilferty all in a room calling Sean Couturier to tell him they were hiring Rick Tocchet, and then told Couturier, call your teammates and spread the word that this is happening. That's something you do when you're, number one, trying to show that you have a good relationship with your captain still, but number two, sending the message that, hey, you're going to have a much better relationship with this coach than you have with the last one. So that's not something you do if you're considering moving on from Sean Couturier as a captain. That's what you do when you're trying to solidify the fact that he's your captain.
And plus, what a better captain. He's got the Bobby Clark look, no teeth in the front. I mean, he's the epitome of a hockey captain for the Flyers. I love it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
All right, Charlie. Very interesting. What's going to happen unfold on Friday? Where are you going to be? You going to a draft party down here? Or are you going to be up in the Philly area?
No, well, I'm going to be in Atlantic City because the whole reason why they're having that draft party in Atlantic City is because that's where the Flyers war room is going to be. That's where
get out, really?
That's where all the scouts are going to be. Yeah, they've holed up at the Hard Rock. That's where they're all going to be. So all the beat writers, including myself, we're all going to be down there as well because we want to be there to interview Danny and talk after the draft and after the picks. So we're all going to be down there, and I'll be down there as well. But we are having a draft party for those who aren't going to be in Atlantic City. We're having a draft party. PHLY is pairing with Broad Street Hockey at the Chickies and Pete's.
Nice.
Right in South Philly, right near the ballparks. I believe that one starts at 6 p.m., so check that out.
And I will see you in Atlantic City on Friday night, Charlie.
All right, sounds good, Billy.
All right, thanks, Charlie. Appreciate it, and have a great weekend. Rest of it.
You got it. You too.
All right, bye-bye. There he is, Charlie O'Connor. He's the beat writer for PHLY.com. He covers the Flyers.